Hi, my name's Troy Kaji. I live in Berkeley, and you're going to hear my personal reflections on this present moment that we're all sharing historically, and then seeing it through the lens of Manzanar and specifically people of various faiths and how that informs us. First of all, my father's family and mother's family, they're both from Los Angeles. My father's ended up going to Manzanar with some of the first folks there. My mother's ended up in Poston. Um, and this whole journey of me speaking, started in our church's St. Mary Magdalene Berkeley's Racial Equity Committee when they wanted to, because of the George Floyd incident, they wanted to honor the different people of color groups and had each of us in turn start speaking on this. So that was in 2021 or two. Laura can correct me. Uh, there were two talks that we gave, and then after that, I started leading personal journeys to Manzanar to share my father's story in 2024 and then this year, 2025. Um, so my own Christian background is I started with a traditionally Japanese American church, Gardena Valley Baptist, where my grandmother and parents, my mom's side, went to. They're all baptized there, as was myself. And then I became Catholic later. Um, I won't go into that story, but now that's where I sit. I kind of sit with one foot in sort of both churches and invited in people from my other church to come along to these Manzanar pilgrimages. And for tonight, though, I really am leaning into material that I ran into along my journey um, because it just speaks to this moment right now. So now I'm going to read a little bit. Um, Here's my questions for all of us. And this was what I'm perceiving this moment to highlight right now. Who remembers a time when DEI training was humdrum normal? Federal jobs, if you had a friend, family member in them, they were just boringly stable. Government in the USA, we all took high school government class, it meant checks and balances, free press, active citizenry. And then more recently, for those of you who've bought solar panels or electric vehicles, clean energy seemed like it would replace dirty. Immigrants were welcomed, protected, promoted, immigrated. Really, it's just less than a year ago. And what this emotional moment that we've been sharing this year, as Christians, I wanted to put out there, besides us all feeling what we're feeling and thinking what we're thinking, 9 months since the inauguration, how have we, each as people of faith, have these events united us, divided us? Have we withdrawn? Have we leaned in? Have we connected with the news or avoided it? Have we connected with those? And I'm going to lean into this deportation facts. Uh, I got this from AI and the internet, so that's how factual it is, okay? But how many ICE deportations have happened? Estimated 500,000. That's four times as many Japanese Americans who were incarcerated. It's projected to reach 600,000, and they're estimating self-deportations to be 1.6 million. um, just for 2025. Okay. Um, and you'll have to be my timekeeper, Craig. This was supposed to be the first. I'm going to do a one part teeing up topics and thoughts for you, and then a second part leaning into the stories of the people of faith. But I'm starting here because this mental confusion we're all feeling is something actually, in a way, treasure it. It's helping us understand other people, other times, other places, our own feelings right now, use them to relate to every immigrant who had to flee their country for one reason or another. Lots of your family members, lots of my family members. Um, but then the challenge that we're all struggling with as people of faith is, well, don't I do something else than just watch this happen? What am I supposed to do? Um, okay. How am I doing on time, Craig? Okay. I'm going to now actually start into what faith might give us. And I appreciate those of you who've gone on pilgrimages, who've been working from a people of faith perspective and wondering how the two match, right? Um, there was an exhibit which we will provide in the links later. I'll tell you, there were three things very formative for me in my own telling of this story. And I thank you for this format where I'm focusing on the faith aspect. I have not done this before. In the Japanese American National Museum, there is or was an exhibit of articles from people of faith who were in the camps. 75% of them were Buddhist, 25% were Christian of various sorts, some Protestant, some Catholic. And it was a fascinating exhibit, and it was held during the pandemic, February 26, 2022 to February 19th in anniversary of Executive Order 9066, I should say, 2023. So it went on for about a year. It was in Los Angeles. I'm not sure that any of you have heard of it, but we're going to send a link. One thing about it being in the pandemic is they could not do an in-person curator's explanation of the exhibit. So they did a virtual one. It's recorded and it goes on for about an hour. And it's fascinating and will help you, me, all of us go, okay, I'm facing shattering events as a person of faith. What does the faith give me? Without going into all 50 minutes of content, Duncan Williams is a USC professor, and he summarized it in a bunch of words that start with M. And I thought it was beautiful. Both the Bible or the Buddhists have their sutras or writings. We're familiar with those. They have stories of going through struggles of various sorts. We have access to maps. Draw on that map. There are stories of migrations. For Buddhists, apparently the Buddha had a sort of a direction when he was dying that he foresaw the faith spreading eastward. And what in this presentation that you could see online, which we'll send after in an email, Craig's going to send this link. Um, One of the Buddhist priests, as he was being transported on a train, I believe it was to Heart Mountain, had the insight of, hey, the faith is supposed to spread going eastward, and I'm going eastward. And he put it in a poem, very short poem. Well, anyway, there are migration stories and of being dislocated and setting up in new lands. I'm sure that's ringing some bells for many of you. And how, um, for example, Jeremiah said something about, look out for the welfare of the place that you get moved to. Okay. Um, Map migration, uh, mirror, often faith. I should say under migration, there's four things that he pulled out that your faith can give you while you're being dislocated. There's the teachings themselves, which give you a perspective, as it has been for us all, I'm sure, a perspective on these events that are happening. It might be a perspective of other values that perhaps aren't being fulfilled, like justice, fairness, truthfulness. Um, there's the ritual of ceremony, of marking each day, each minute of each day as sacred time, and having those resources through faith to do that. Community, of course, is part of that, and the support and the reflection that brings of not doing this alone. Um, and then creating objects jointly that mark these stages in the journey. I'd encourage all of us to make something as we go through this year and who knows how many years to come. Anyway, so Mir, there was as a Christian, it's really interesting hearing from Duncan Williams, who's an ordained Buddhist minister, and his reflections on Buddhist things that I have no idea about, but a lot of the people in the camps did. So those of you who had families who were Buddhist, it's really interesting. And he has a book also. That'll be one of the links in the email Craig sends later. Uh, um, I'm blanking on the name of his book, but it's a really interesting book documenting how the communities who had mostly the priests who were arrested. Just think of that. Just think you had a faith community, your leader's arrested, stuck in an FBI detention camp. What does your group do? You start leading yourself. That book tells that story. Um, the last M, which I map migration. Oh, did I say mirror? Mirror, mirror. Okay. So one of these Buddhist teachings that I'd never heard of was there was a Buddhist leader of a important sect in Japan, Buddhist sect, and don't quote me on which sect it is, but this leader said to the monks, well, know what's in your kitchen and, use what you got to make a meal. And when you make a meal not just for the body, but for the welfare of the people in your community, something like that, and also for spiritual benefit. And he wasn't really talking about a kitchen. He was talking about your life, and your beliefs are supposed to, you got to start with what you have. And faith in the camps was very much like that. You just had what you had. And out of that, you have to make a meal with it, and not just for the body, but for the spirit. Okay, so it's a mirror, that kind of mirror. Finally, mystery. There's some irreducible part of our faith that's going to stay a mystery. Okay, I spoke long enough, Craig. Um, that's part one. Did we want to keep opening it up to questions at this point, or what you want to do?
Sure. I mean, I think if there's any questions immediate that you have for Troy, um, go ahead. All right. Keep going, Troy.
Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start sharing some pictures. So I'm going to take over the screen and scroll through some pictures and talk as I go, just so you know more specifics about some of the stories. Okay. Now I have to find my photo album. Okay, this is my photo album. Let me take this over though from my device. Here we go. All right. So in Manzanar, I share my father's family story. And this is his father, Umetaro Kaji, his wife Katsu, who was a picture bride, his two older sisters, and it's taken about 1924 because my dad was born in 26 and he wasn't there. Um, Here's my dad. I assume he's about one. He was born in 26, so I figure this is about 1927. Sailor suit. Okay, my story focuses on my dad, but it's also part of the LA community. This is my mom's where she lived. My dad, they lived in Boyle Heights, but my mom and her family, they lived in Gardena. Now, this is a red line map during the New Deal. Um, I don't know if you can see this, but that I grew up in Gardena also. Um, at the time, they said, well, it's red line because it has this problem. 25% of the nationalities are Japanese and a few Mexicans. And the problem is continued infiltration of, okay, it's the J word, okay? Well, this is how they grew up. This is the welcoming Los Angeles of their era. Um, the other thing is, even the places where they lived in huge concentrations, San Pedro had this place called Terminal Island and specifically Fish Harbor in San Pedro, had a whole Japanese fishing village. There was this California impressionist, and I found this. It's like, oh, this is great. Let's see what it shows. At the time, 1930s. Well, there you have the picturesque boats, fishing warehouses, no people. It would have been crawling with, Japanese Americans. In fact, this was the first place that Japanese Americans were bumped out of a week after Executive Order 9066. The Navy, who had a base there, used it to push everybody out in that village just out on the streets. They had nowhere to go. Anyway, it looks so placid and beautiful here, right? So, Fish Harbor, San Pedro. This is where the people of faith come in, and I'm specifically citing a book which we'll send to you later. The author is Anne M. Blankenship. The book is called Christianity, Social Justice, and the Japanese American Incarceration During World War II. It focuses on Quakers, Roman Catholics, Protestants of various kinds, and their personal responses. This is going to be super helpful to all of us. Reading their stories of what people did, and the ones who went in with the internees because that was their flock, very costly, very costly. These are two of these Maryknoll sisters who weren't necessarily in Los Angeles, and they had a choice to go to the mother house, they call it, for the Maryknoll in New York and just sit out the whole war there. Uh, Instead, they took their wool habits and went to Manzanar to stay with the people there. Um, One is named Sister Bernadette. I forget the other person's name. Sorry. But if you ever read the book Farewell to Manzanar, where that author, as like a 7 or 8 year old, starts going there, starts wanting to become Catholic, and her dad says, no way. Well, this was under the influence of one of these sisters. Uh, One thing I do call out when we do make our tours is we go see one of those common showers, which just has a bunch of shower heads, no dividers. Same with the toilets, right? Um, well, the Catholic congregation, for their sake, they built a divider in the women's shower house so they could have a little bit of privacy while they showered there. Um, because they appreciated their sacrifice of coming in with them to do the church. This is my dad, um, in front of his barrack 26. Uh, Usually this is, anyway, you could see he's, normal high school student there. He joined this band. I don't have a picture of the band, but I did find a picture of this flyer. Uh, his band was the Jive Bombers. They were a swing band. They were having a post-Easter dance starting at 8 p.m. April 16. And anyway, um, and then just this is in the yearbook. My dad was very active there. That's his name at the bottom right, along with these lifelong friends he made, class of 44, high school. And bow tie. Great. Um, he also told me, I'll tell you one thing, those of you who have had family members in there, half of you said they didn't say anything. Um, that's a very common experience for my family as well. They didn't say much. My dad and mom didn't say much until it started opening up in the 70s. And then a little later, he told me, yeah, there were some guys who went up there fishing up in the mountains behind there. There's this guy with fish. You don't get the fish in the camp, and he's sitting right in front of the barrack. And then this is Mount Williamson, way up high, 12,000 feet. There's a lake. Um, I won't go into that story. This is Manzanar. Mount Williamson, this is like the perfect picture, right? Ansel Adams, American flag, touching this mountaintop, surrounded by barracks, surrounded by barbed wire fence. Um, I think that says it all. So, but for the People of Faith moment, this is a painting in 1944 done by, uh, you see Mount Williamson in the back. You see a barrack. This is where they had the Catholic Church. Um, they had Protestant services in barracks, Catholic services in barracks, Buddhist services in barracks. If it was too hot, I guess you had it outside. But faith in the camp. This was by one of the Catholic parishioners. So again, that's why I'm saying they took the time to make memorials of this time. I would challenge us to do the same. I don't know what it is for you, poems, videos, who knows? But this is something so that you could share this story yourself later. You got to start recording things now. Oh, okay. Now we get off topic. So I'll just say my dad out of the camp, joined the army, joined the military intelligence service. This statue still exists in Tokyo, and he was, a GI, and then he went to the war crimes trials in the Philippines. But it's kind of off topic. Um, anyway, I'm gonna now stop the share, and now we'll open it back up for questions. I'm starting to scroll. Okay, thanks for putting the links in the chat, everybody. Okay, I'm not seeing. Oh, can't unmute. I see. Oh, that's Carol and Stan. Nagasawa. While you were speaking before, um, one of the Japanese denominations is the Free Methodist denomination, and um, one of the gifted preachers was Wayne Okimachi, who helped marry myself and my wife many years ago. So um, I think community is so important, and I'm glad it's continuing. Um, if we can't unmute, um, I could go on with other slides for the time being.
Okay, go.
All right. All right.
Oh,
I can
hello.
unmute. So
Great.
I read a book by Jacques Ellul, philosopher, uh,
Yes.
and anyway, the book had to do with freedom and hope. And the main point of the book was that you you can't have freedom without hope, and you can't have hope without a measure of freedom. And so my question is, even if physically you're confined to camp, what were the ways that people managed to have a sense of freedom, um, maybe just over their own person, or what that gave them hope, or vice versa? They had hope of freedom that was not necessarily taken away by that particular environment. Does that make sense?
Yes. Right. I should tell you, I'm a physician and I work with patients in jail in
Mhm.
Contra Costa County. And so it's, I kind of see that every day in a way. What are folks doing to um, keep their spirits up and, make use of that time? So reading is a big one. Uh, People nowadays are not used to keeping journals, but in the camps, one of the artifacts by a Salvation Army uh, church leader, he made this incredible bilingual King James on one side, his direct translation into Japanese on the other, and he did it every day. Some of you have devotional readings you follow. And then there's just more mundane things like at my jail, the West County Jail is a bunch of the modules where the inmates stay around this grassy field full of ground squirrels. And some of the some of the guys have this junk food. It looks like um, Cheetos to me. And they were like tossing the Cheetos over the fence, and the little squirrels were getting fat, really fat. So, nature, a lot
Nature.
of,
Yeah.
you've seen that you may have artifacts from your families, right? They've
Hmm.
carved wood, they carved pins, they
Yeah.
carved these little birds and flowers.
Yeah. My dad in Poston somehow constructed a wood lathe with available materials, and he turned wood. One of the things he made was salt and pepper shakers. So there was still that ability to create in that situation.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
Yeah, God made us creative. And that's the shame of the family members who don't speak up, right? Because, there were things they did somehow to survive. I'm not sure what they did, but
Yeah. Yeah. My wife has a story of her grandfather. Somehow he made a koi fish pond in Manzanar. Uh,
oh,
That
yes.
wasn't my story.
That wasn't your story?
No, my mom probably might have said that.
Oh, okay.
Hmm. Um, yeah, when I lead the tours around Manzanar, they have excavated Merritt Park, which was a huge landscaped park. Uh, they have a stonescape, a waterscape, the plantscape, and it's that was a place where they took a break. If you have a community that's working together on projects, um, that's really helpful. Um, I yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. It's great. Others out there with questions, or Carol, did you have?
No.
Okay. Um, I'm going to go back to the slides just because I think it'll prompt a few other thoughts in people. One of my responses, even before this whole thing started with the recent inauguration, as I said, it started with the George Floyd and my church starting to do um, starting to form a racial equity committee, starting to start Bible study groups about just faith is what it's called. Um, I think I'll go back to these pictures now that I'm showing it, but this is all an outgrowth of that. My personal response to faith, along with my congregation, if you are in some sort of community of faith, one of your first actions might be just to talk it up at your community of faith and see if people want to do something like the Episcopal group that Jim Richardson was talking about, making this pilgrimage to Tule Lake. That's a way of marking the time, remembering those who went before. Protestant churches are, my Baptist church for sure, is not good at remembering history at all. But this is my dad's um, sister, who's 4 years older than her, Auntie Dora, post-war, with her two kids, one named Brucey in honor of him, and then Mary Ann, who's having, looks like a 1-year-old birthday, as far as I could tell. Um, this is Umetaro and Katsu after the war. I should tell you, grandchildren, of course, are a source of great joy. But even in the camp, they started joining a group in there called Seicho no Ie, which is a new religion. It was new at the time in Japan anyway. Uh, That's why people back in the day used to go to Harajuku, was because Seicho no Ie was there, not because you had dancing teens who with color coordinated anime suits. So anyway, they were very strong proponents after the war. They would have the Seicho no Ie groups in their living room. It gave them a sense of meaning and purpose after the war. Um, Oh, and they never told me this. Nobody told me this. I found it in the archives at Bancroft by accident. As I was digging around, it's like, what? Umetaro Katsu joined this thing called Seicho no Ie? No one ever told me that part. Um, don't know why. So, um, and that's my dad before he got married. All I know is it's before 54, which is when he got married. So the post, and it must be my Auntie Mariko who's taking the picture. She never liked to be in pictures. Um, anyway, that's what a vision of post-war. This house, they bought in my Auntie Mariko's name because she was the first citizen-born child. And when she turned 21, they were able to purchase it before the war. They had a woman stay there rent-free. Uh, Never paid them a dime, never paid the taxes or anything, but did give the house back to them 2 years post-war. They got to stay in the second floor while she still stayed in the first floor 2 years longer. I guess she wasn't ready to go. But anyway, they did have a house to go back to. This is me. My mom's holding me. I must be about two. My dad is then city treasurer of Gardena, the first Japanese American elected on the mainland. And my mom was worried because Charles Lindbergh's kid was kidnapped, that I would be kidnapped. And she said, stop your political career after one term. It's my brother John, my sister Mickey, my mother Frances, who was in Poston. Um, Life goes on. 72. Who remembers there was a hospital after the Watts riots called Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital that opened in 1972. And they wanted, I don't have the picture of the groundbreaking. It's all African American leaders and my dad. This one, odd person out in the picture. It's like, why was he there? He, on the left is Supervisor Kenny Hahn towards the middle. He took on my dad after he was elected official, and he represented Supervisor Hahn at all these events and things. And then, with Mayor Tom Bradley, that's my brother and my dad, they got way into politics as a way of making sure it didn't happen again. That's their old house. And then, of course, a lot of Japanese families have this custom of visiting the gravesite. Here it is, very apropos memory. We're just about hitting Halloween and All Saints Day and All Souls Day. Remembering doing this sort of ritual, where you came from, what their families are. I just encourage all of you to just keep recording and bringing your families along. You're supposed to wash this thing off, right? Those of you who've done this, get your sponge, your bucket, you wash it off, and then you put the flowers inside. That's my dad when he turned 90. That's me in the background. And, this is too late to share your story in a way. The memories start to go, right? So get them now while the memories are sharp. Put it on a videotape. I'm glad my mom and dad both did that. Weird things happen. This was a very distant relative whose daughter was thrifting in a thrift store in Fullerton. And they said, wait a minute, we've heard this name Tashiro, which is my mom's maiden name, and they're having this thing for sale out here. Is this your family? And indeed it was. And this is how they got out of Poston. You had to have a sponsor outside of camp to accept you. And that's how you could get out. And Colorado had the one governor who welcomed Japanese during that really dark time. And the Colorado folks didn't have to move. And so my family, they got to go out of Poston. You can see the block number 42, Unit 11, number C, Apartment C, to Brighton, Colorado. The day after we got this, my mom fell, broke her hip, and a month later she died. But it was, it's funny how what's out there and what you could find out to fill in the story. That's just a highlight of that. Again, I'm just gonna memory, ritual, your faith, put them in there. If you can have big celebrations, like the Japanese American National Museum, which my dad helped found. He did a last, should I say, upbraiding of them for maybe veering off course a bit. This was in 2017 in May. He gave them he was supposed to do a 2-minute talk and he did a 10-minute harangue of them, which is great. I didn't know he had it in him. If you could do that, great. If you have organizations you could join, sometimes they have to be held to remember their original purpose and mission. I'm sure that's never happened to any of you with nonprofits, but it did happen to us and continues happening. Bring your families along for the journey. They're going to be the ones who continue this story. Okay. And if you do go to Manzanar, here is one of the things, since I'm a physician, they have beautiful, very informative signage, which for decades they had these historians there who did a great job with the community, taking more and more stories and putting them into explanatory um, material there. Manzanar has the most of it, the most developed, and I go there several times a year. If you're interested, I'll probably go again in the spring. Um, all you see there now, this is great because otherwise, all you see is nothing. You see, there's just concrete slab. Um, there's not much to see. The last thing I'm going to call out, and then I'm going to end on this note. This is the iconic tower in Manzanar Cemetery. A lot of us cannot read these characters anymore, but it says Ire To, which means Spirit Consoling Tower. Um, this is an interfaith project. A year after they got there in 1943, the Buddhist, Protestant, and Catholic communities got together and jointly raised the funds and put this up. The Buddhist priest worked on the calligraphy. There was a architect, stonemason, Catholic guy named Roy Cotto. One thing, if you go there, these things look like wood. They're not wood. They're concrete made to look like wood, which he designed. He also designed the guard towers at Manzanar, which have sort of curved roofline. The Young Buddhist Association supplied most of the muscle power to put this up. And for every year afterward, some of the reverends, a Buddhist one, a Protestant one, will go every year to say prayers for in memory of everyone who was there. That's where I'm going to end on, or maybe, and I'll at least open it up for questions again. I don't know how we're doing on time. Oh, I guess there's just 5 minutes left. So, any final questions? I'll stop the share.
Actually, not Troy. We actually have a half hour.
Oh, we have a half hour more.
Yeah. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable everybody to unmute, and we'll go back into a sort of a larger conversational mode. And here's your chance if you have questions to ask. Hold on a second here. Let's see. Okay, so you now should be able to unmute yourselves if you wanted to ask a question or comment on something you heard and ask Troy to elaborate or whatever. So,
Yes, I have a question. So Troy, in New College's, I'm going to say publicity about this, it said that you will feature stories of faith and how Christians responded to the internment crisis. So I would love to hear a couple of stories of faith and if the Christians' response was different, perhaps, than the Buddhist response or not. I'll take my.
Okay, so this is what I do on site at Manzanar. I have my device. I've put on little notes, talking points. So now I'm going to read off of this thing. This is the Catholic parish at Manzanar. And the word Nikkei means people of Japanese descent. So numerous Nikkei Catholics appreciated the sacrifice of religious workers who lived in the camp, particularly Sisters Susanna and Bernadette. You saw their picture earlier. Two Nikkei sisters who chose to go to Manzanar rather than return to Maryknoll headquarters in New York. They sympathized with the sisters' sacrifice of wearing heavy wool habits in the extreme heat. When it's 80 degrees at 6 a.m. in the morning, you know it's going to be bad the rest of the day. If you go to the high desert Manzanar, and all these other camps are built out in the middle of nowhere, it's pretty extreme. Poston, I won't even mention how hot it got there. Anyway, volunteers built a private space in the shower room to spare the sisters, the indignity of communal showering. So Jean Houston's classic autobiography, Farewell to Manzanar, chronicles her infatuation with Catholicism as a child in the camp. She secretly attended catechism classes led by the nuns until her father forbade it. Commenting on the notable increase in church attendance, Brother Theophane recorded that, quote, "We believe that these people are sincere in their interests and are not coming out of gratitude for what Maryknoll has done for them. Many have remarked that they realize now that the Catholic Church is sincere in its disinterested, humane work, that we are working solely for the good of the people themselves and not for what we might get out of it." In Manzanar, 246 received baptism and 8 left Manzanar to train for Catholic vocations. Maryknoll, which still exists, Maryknoll's primary directive was to show solidarity with the Nikkei by going with them to the camp. Up in the north, there's a camp assembly center called Camp Harmony, of all things, where another Seattle Maryknoll sister, Regina, wrote, quote, "I was happy and pleased to go. I loved the people and felt very keenly the grave injustice being done to them. I guess I thought that by sharing their life with its grave inconveniences, poor food, extremes of heat and cold, sandstorms, etc., would somehow convince them that we were those who loved and trusted them." Unfortunately, with this book, which we'll share later, Christianity, Social Justice, and the Japanese American Incarceration during World War II, documents, is although these local level people in direct contact with the community stepped up, stepped in, leaned in, showed solidarity, their higher ups often did not. Japanese Presbyterians in Seattle, after the war, the Presbyterian higher ups would not let them reopen their churches. Maryknoll in LA, after the war, the local priest who went to all of the camps, Father Hugh Lavery, he was really important to my family at Poston. He drove to all 10 of those camps, back and forth, back and forth. He wanted to have the LA Maryknoll Center reopened. The higher ups in New York said, basically, get used to it. We're not going to do that. So there's a split in that you'll see. It's just very messy. That'll remind you of church history too. There are those who really, I think, are much more of an example to me now, and those who it's real. There's opposition, internal as well as external, to deal with. I'll look for another story, Laura, but I didn't, because the other ones were mostly in Minidoka, which is in Idaho. I didn't take down those stories for this Manzanar site visits. So yes, there are, but I didn't take any down.
There's another hand up.
Yes.
Hey, Troy. My name is Dr. Cesar Cruz, and I just wanted to take a moment to thank you. I feel really moved by what you've shared and also seeing how your family has stood up for the rights of so many. And I want to give some thank yous and then ask my question. My first thank you is to Yuri Kochiyama. Yuri Kochiyama was my teacher. I got to know her over the last 25 years of her life. And it'll lead to my question when I say a little bit about what I learned from Yuri. Yuri was in an internment camp, and what she said about her early years is that she was all about Americana. She was all about the US. She was all in. And then after that experience, she still wanted to be all in, but just constantly dismissed growing up. And it was such an influence for her to meet Malcolm X and to organize with Malcolm X. I met her when she was doing prison abolition work for Mexican and Native American prisoners. And I was just so moved by Yuri, and I just want to lift up her spirit. May she rest in peace. I also want to lift up another one of my teachers, Richard Aoki. And Richard Aoki was one of the first field generals of the Black Panther Party. And Richard Aoki was also in an internment camp and very much misunderstood. But what Richard taught me, he was like, I think they want us Japanese to just be docile and be quiet. And he cursed a lot. And I'm not going to curse now. But be like, F that. We're going to stand up for the people. And Richard was always like that. And may he rest in peace. And I want to also thank one family. And this is a family I did not know, the Munemitsu family. But the Munemitsu family is really instrumental in desegregating public schools. And I'll share with some folks why. When the Munemitsu family was rounded up, they were really close to a Latino family, half Mexican, half Puerto Rican, called the Mendez family. And the Munemitsu family shared their home with this Latino family. And the Munemitsu daughter, she ended up in an internment camp. And her best friend, Silvia, who was 9 at the time, was outside going to a barnyard school. And they sued the state of California in Mendez versus Westminster. And that began the process of desegregating all public schools in California. And we give credit to the Latino family, the Mendez, but we know less about the Munemitsu. And if it wasn't for them, I just feel thankful for cross solidarity. And I guess my question is, as you were growing up and as you've been hearing stories and collecting stories, what began to happen to the Japanese American psyche about Americana? And then what I know is that many of the leaders of the Asian and Pacific Islander movement happen to be folks whose families were interned. And so just would love to hear you sharing a little bit about growing up and hearing about this perfect American world and then seeing what it is, and then sort of the awakening and the rising up of a Japanese American consciousness to fight for justice.
That's a great question. And I appreciate all the shout outs and thanks. And I want to underline that that's important to remember the stories of those who've gone before as people of faith now, or just as people, to help give us that perspective, give us a map of what has happened before, and give us, there have been giants people have faced before, and they've stared them down somehow. I think that, first of all, I'm going to say that there's also another, I was going to lead a tour to Manzanar November 1st. Some of you may know that, but because of the shutdown, I had to cancel that. And one of the places we like to visit on the way there, when you're going from Bakersfield over to Tehachapi Pass, is where the Cesar Chavez National Historic Site is. And recently I stopped there. It was near Dia de los Muertos. They had it all decorated so nicely, and it's a shame that it has to be closed right now. They were smart. They retained the back part, La Paz, under their personal control, so they can't shut that down. But the family wanted to just keep it private. But they also were wanting to share the story. And I was at this Cesar Chavez Memorial when the staffer told me the story, that they went to visit the Manzanar site, saw how educational and powerful it is, And that's when they decided very recently, it was after Cesar's wife died, which was not that long ago, to make it into a National Historic Site. So again, the cross group collaborations are powerful. On the other hand, what can happen and is happening, I'm sure, right now, is a very severe extreme event like this is dividing communities. And one of the features of growing up in Gardena that had about 40,000 Japanese Americans was I got to see a full spectrum of hearing who hated who would not talk to who, everybody, everybody who ended up in Tule Lake that marked the loyalty questionnaire no, no, were ostracized. There was a lot of voter apathy because, they were traumatized during the war. They didn't want to vote. My parents would go out there and try to get Japanese Americans to vote, and they just would not in the numbers that represented how many live there. So one of the things that uh, happened when the 70s, 60s, and 70s happened, and my generation folks started digging in and going, hey, how come you never told us this? And then with the Vietnam War perspective and protesting and, very activist parts of my community formed, and we're just saying to the older generation, what happened? You didn't tell us a story. Did you even step up? And it turns out that 1/10 of the Japanese Americans who are in there who answered no, no, that is a form of resistance. They got the brunt of a terrible experience, which I do not understand fully. And I don't think the community has not fully, I think they're still grappling with that story. There are long books to read about it. Satsuki Ina is one of the leaders of trying to bring that story to light with her mom's story. Um, so I think it's very tricky about what, when you're in the middle of something, things are not, and people are not totally black or totally white, good or bad. There's kind of like mixtures, including myself, including my families. Um, I've delved pretty deeply into their histories. Um, so I guess I'll wrap this up because it's so complicated. There are so many layers of forced removal, oppression, and division of communities, layered upon layers of that. In both Tule Lake, what happened before that was the Modoc War. The current Tule Lake property sits on an airstrip owned by the Modoc Nation in Oklahoma, who are not interested in giving up any land to develop a big national historic site. And again, maybe that's a smart thing given this shutdown, but um, if you talk to the Tule Lake um, camp, detention camp, concentration camp, whatever you want to call that place, that is a current impasse where they've not been able to fully develop out that site, but you could kind of understand the other point of view too. Manzanar, that's a site where the Paiute first lived, and they got removed when became part of the U.S. They got moved all the way out to Fort Tejon, which is hundreds of miles away. If you look at, yeah, so you'll just see more stories of dislocation, sometimes with solidarity, sometimes not. And I think I would encourage all of you to learn these stories. We'll give you a few resources to start with. Celebrate the good. It's just like a Christian life or life of faith, right? We define ourselves by our actions, Some are good, some are not so good, some are sort of in the middle. And yeah, great question.
I wanted to call on Mako. You had an interesting anecdote about the Book of Daniel, but also some good questions about spiritual formation. I wanted to see if you wanted to offer that in your own words.
Sure. Thanks, Craig. I had just heard anecdotally that the Book of Daniel was often preached. Um, Maybe a little more. I have no idea. I mean, and this is just kind of anecdotes, but it came from two people. And I can kind of understand the sociological similarity, right? Like people felt like they were in exile, they were kind of in some ways deported into a somewhere deeper into the empire. Um, and so it's interesting, but I guess I guess I'm concerned to learn for the present again, like what kinds of things, either in scripture or otherwise, prepare people to tell their stories, right? Like and even in a protest or resistance sense, there was there was I guess in maybe this is easy for me to say. I'm sure it is, but like I wish there were more people who came out and raised a stink about what just happened, and but that's why I'm curious about the spiritual formation side of things and whether there's any kind of reflection from a pastoral angle.
If I'm to try to restate your question, which is a complex one, um, it has to do with how exactly does faith inform a response that seems proportionate to whatever's going on. And I think I just got finished reading a biography of this fellow named Bartolome de las Casas. His whole, as he was seeing Spain take over and enslave and do massacres of the indigenous peoples who were once very populous there. And he was not, you could see with his life journey, he's kind of trying to figure it out. And he has opposition from within his own church or his own order or whatever. But I think it's going to be very messy. That's all I could really say. And if do you feel like the spirit seems to be leading you in a direction, which is why I'm giving this talk. Um, this, um, I think you just discern according to your understanding of the faith and whatever's being highlighted for you from the scriptures and just a sense of the moment and just try to go there and just knowing you're going to make mistakes along the way, but some good things will come out of it. I look at these lives. It also helps to look at these lives, these resources that will give you, because it makes you think. That's what I think really helps prepare is when you start going deep into other people's stories and biographies. Um, like um, that's the kind of thing. I was raised Baptist, right? So it's like you're supposed to just quote a verse, chapter and verse. Oh, live that. That's it. That didn't work for me. I wasn't smart enough to know how to apply this complex book of all these spread out over time. It's still not good enough. But whereas reading somebody's story who is a person of faith that I look up to and seeing how they faced these complex events and knowing they weren't perfect, and recognizing maybe they made this mistake, but they seem to do that really well. that's what helps me as a flawed person figure out what I'm supposed to do with this time.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you so much. Claire.
So, thank you so much, Troy. This was a really moving and inspiring and well organized talk. And so I'd like to be bold enough to add to sort of answers of what we might do. I think doing this talk is a really important step to make available to people the kind of information in community and thoughtful consideration of what's going on. I also appreciated that you mentioned the Just Faith discussion groups, because those are available to any of us as facilitated prayer discussion information guides to small faith groups. And as Troy mentioned, we're doing 2 groups right now on faith and immigration justice. And there's an excellent program on indigenous peoples and the real history. And some of that is also, we want to do something, but I think first you have to have enough knowledge and you have to have a community. So I think this is a very reasonable first step. It's not the answer to all the dreadful things that are happening, but it's something where we can gather together and remember that we're not isolated. We have a faith tradition and we have a community. So thanks so much, Troy.
And I thank Claire and Laura for bringing that Just Faith study groups to our Catholic parish, but it's not a Catholic program. Just Faith is a curriculum for understanding how to be a person of faith dealing with very deep-seated issues. And it's very action-oriented every single session. What is going to be your action? So this is a direct outgrowth of those groups, this talk today.
But also it's dialogue. This is not something where they're telling you what to think. They really encourage folks to have honest discussions about what's going on. Anyway, tough times.
Yes.
Troy, Alan had a question about, I mean, in addition to the federal shutdown obviously affecting Manzanar, has the administration's actions also affected the signage, the current signage at the Manzanar site?
I was going to go this time and take a picture of every single sign, and that is a concern that they're going to take things down. And it's a concern that I read about from the Asian American academics who, well, not just Asian American, all ethnic, anything that is not big and beautiful, I suppose, is at risk right now. And then that the federal government over the National Park Service has a target on that. So what I have pictures of one of the historians who I worked with at Manzanar, and I'll tell you what happened. First, I'll show you her picture. Her name is Patricia Biggs, and I thank her for doing such an in-depth set of signage right near the front gates of the Manzanar riot, which my father was there, but he was there as a high school student, just sitting on the edge of the riot. You know, hey, nothing's going on. Hey, this sounds exciting. Let's go there. And then when the tear gas and the bullets started flying, he got out of there. And so I never really understood what the underlying reasons were of it. She has the best signage up, but let me tell you what happened. Okay, this picture is from 2019. I took my brother-in-law Tom there, and I'm showing the book that they have, my dad's autobiography, Jive Bomber: A Sentimental Journey. And that's him in the second row behind that other guy's head on the right. He's partly obscured by the saxophonist. He's playing a trumpet. Anyway, that's the Jive Bomber band. Um, anyway, she had done wonderful work there. It's the best explanation of the experience that I've seen at a site because they go into detail on teeny tiny detail on person's stories who seem to come back to Manzanar. They took their story down. Oh, you're the person in this picture in the schoolroom, etc. And that's what history actually, that level of history, that's what you really want to get to understand yourself as a person. Well, what would I have done in a classroom? Anyway, she and another woman named Alyssa, I'd gone there for years. Every year I'd say hi to them, and then they knew my parents really well. And Alyssa even could tell me who my dad's girlfriends were in Manzanar. So what happened while Biden was in office is they both were forced to retire in December 2023. And I immediately read that, and it's just a hunch, that Trump one had embedded people to do his bidding and get out all the experienced people. And it was pretty traumatic for Patricia, actually. She said she never wanted to go back after being forced out on such short notice. So yeah, I'm going to skip over this part. So what happened was we started doing these, sorry about that, skipping around. Started doing these, my own pilgrimage, just telling my dad's story, like I said, there, and had people from St. Mary Magdalene Church, Berkeley, and this Church Without Walls, Berkeley, and just other friends randomly who I invited go. And Patricia came for this first one. Beautiful March, snow on the mountains. There she is. And she said it was very healing for her because she thought she would never go back because of the way she was fired. And she really added just story after story of persons that she had met there and got their stories, or as a historian putting it into these wonderful exhibit plaques that are just everywhere currently, we hope. Who knows what they're doing right now. So anyway, that is, if you bring up what's happening to the signs, I'm worried because they are good at executing their plan. And they don't care about legalities, right? We already know that. So, okay, I'll stop that share. Okay, there it is. I know you're all used to these Zoom, not smooth Zooming by us older participants. So thank you for your patience with that.
Well, it definitely looks like, based on your slides that we had to like rush through, you might need to do a part two, Troy. So anticipate that.
And I should tell you that this was much different because of the moment, because of having to cancel the November trip, and because of this partnership with New College Berkeley, and knowing this was more focused on people of faith, or at least Craig and I, we just totally came up with this format Tuesday.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
Yeah. You did a great job, Troy. I mean, we need to be closing up. I think one comment that I wanted to make is that, I mean, we could have talked a lot about um, the what is it, the um,
Dive bombers. I didn't go
jive
there.
bombers. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It struck me that doing music together was not just a way to persevere or to pass the time, but it was
Yes.
also, to me, it was also an act of resistance. So I've been thinking a lot about joy as an act of resistance, and that we are able to continue to practice and be human, right? And to enjoy each other and to celebrate and to party. Like all that, I see as just a very powerful form of resistance. So anyway, you could do a whole thing on the jive
Yes.
bombers. Yeah. Um, so hey, so we've come to the end of our time, and there are some resources that Troy mentioned that we're going to send your way. There's also a few more that some of you have offered, and so we're going to try to just compile that and send that to you in an email. Another important dimension of that email is going to be an evaluation. Like we really want to hear from you. Like Troy said, we kind of just jumped in the kitchen and cooked this up for you fairly recently. But yeah, to get your feedback on how a 90-minute program like this can be improved. And so would really, really encourage you you'll really be helping us. You'll help us to help you if you could complete that online evaluation. The other thing about that evaluation is that there's always a place at the end where you could write whatever you want. And I want to encourage you that if you do have thoughts and ideas about how to respond in this current moment, that would be a good place to share that. Okay. And we really need to hear these things from one another. I mean, dead serious, right? It's like we are in a very critical time, and it is the time for the church to step up and show up and speak up. And so, whatever creative ways that looks like, it would be great to hear from you on that. The last thing I'll just share is that if you do live in the area, in the Bay Area, on Saturday, November 8th, it's coming right up, a week from tomorrow, but we're going to have a time with Michael Barham and Mark Stryker. They are local biblical scholars, and just helping us engage in the Gospels to help us understand what it means to live into God's rule while being subject to earthly rulers. And that it's basically it's going to be basically being a workshop on Jesus and empire. So I do feel like it'll be a great complement or a way to augment this time we've had with Troy today. So really want to encourage you to come if you can make it a week from tomorrow. So we
I
are
have
going to
one
be
last
oh yes, go
favor
ahead,
to
Troy.
ask. If you're interested in being invited to whenever we schedule the next Manzanar site visit, please message Craig and New College Berkeley that, I could have your email. And then
Yeah,
we'll do that when we figure out when it is.
absolutely. That'd be really wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. We're going to be really good and end on time so we can gain that reputation. So, thank you, everybody. I know some of you aren't on the camera, but thank you for all of you who came tonight, and blessings. Lord be with you.